Hi, I'm Ken Steele. Welcome to another 10 with Ken. Last week we looked at 6 university rebrands that missed the mark, either because they were so crazy creative they took stakeholders aback, or they were so deadly dull they inspired no one. But in the past 2 years, there were also some competent university rebrands that were nonetheless met with remarkable opposition from faculty, students, and alumni. Not necessarily because the new logo was terrible, just because stakeholders were too emotionally attached to what they had before. This week, we look at 6 more higher ed brand misfires that didn't need to happen. Let's take 10 and take heed. 10 with Ken is an almost weekly look at higher ed news, trends, innovations, and bright ideas, in and out of the classroom. Brought to you by Eduvation. When colleges and universities revise their brand identities, they typically consult widely with campus stakeholders, alumni, and the community. That's because they know what can happen if they don't. Students, faculty, and alumni are often intelligent, critical thinkers who love to criticize. They can be ruthless and relentless, and now they can access global audiences through social media. The fact is, nobody likes change. Even improvements are stressful and trigger feelings of loss. And people hate change that occurs as a surprise. Remember the new Coke debacle back in 1985? If you're too young to remember, look it up on Wikipedia. For 100 years, Coca-Cola had been a treasured American icon, particularly in the South. Consumers were emotionally attached to the real thing, regardless of how it tasted. Coke Classic was reintroduced 3 months later. Likewise, even when a new university brand identity is an obvious improvement, it can be met with substantial opposition if the community is emotionally attached to what went before. Certainly that's what happened at the University of Western Sydney in Australia. In 2015, its name was changed to Western Sydney University. The new word order alone was enough to upset some people. The former logo, designed in 2002, featured a prominent blue icon known as the Bluebird. While the overall impression was cool and corporate, students were attached to that bluebird. The new identity is pretty conventional, as we've seen in previous episodes. Blue was replaced with a deep red, the typefaces became a mix of serif and sans serif, and a new shield icon containing the letter W was introduced. Now granted, initials are the lazy way out for a designer, but still, the overall effect isn't bad and certainly feels more contemporary than the Bluebird logo. Still, as you might predict, students started a Twitter campaign to save the Bluebird. When stand-up comedian Amar Rahman came to campus, the logo was a target for comedy.
Speaking of people's money being wasted... I'll tell you what's going on here. There was a meeting, some people sat around a board table, probably all white guys, and they said, look guys, we pay someone a lot of money to sit on Microsoft Word for 2 minutes and design a piece of crap that will appear everywhere.
Nonetheless, Western Sydney U stuck with the new look. Another animal-based rebrand had the potential to be a really strong new identity, but it sparked a backlash from football fans in particular. Penn State University is a flagship public research university with almost 100,000 students on more than 20 campuses. It's one of the largest universities in the world, and sometimes called a public Ivy. But in 2015, it was still using a 30-year-old logo, which was starting to show its age. It's a tribute to the designers that it lasted that long, but still. The shield featured an illustration of Penn State's mascot, the Nittany Lion, specifically a 13-ton campus shrine dating from 1942. In 2015, Penn State was preparing to launch Penn State Health, and the time seemed right to create an overarching brand identity. Penn State retained Jerry Kuiper Partners of Westport, Connecticut, for a 2-year, $128,000 branding project. In August 2015, they unveiled a modernized identity, using slab-serif type, a slightly brighter shade of blue, and focusing on the head of the Nittany Lion shrine. A system of sub-brands was developed for campuses, schools, and the health system. Certainly that tiny type and thin rule of the old logo had to go. But if we've learned anything by now, it's that you can't please everybody. Concerned students rightly observed that the new logo felt a bit like a bank or an insurance company. But what really seemed to drive opposition to the new brand was the cartoonish feel of the lion and its blank stone eyes. Rival football fans had a field day on Reddit. Critics called it the lion in the headlights look, a hypnotized dog looking at cupcakes with a startled look of surprise. The inevitable Change.org petition attracted almost 4,000 signatures. But remember, that's just 4% of Penn State's enrollment. The new logo would have met with much wider acclaim had its eyes looked more like the Varsity Athletics logo. Fierce, not blank. So okay, people get attached to animal mascots, but they can also get attached to much less. Consider Berklee College of Music in Boston. Berklee's before logo, designed in 2002, was barely a logo at all. It was basically lowercase serif type in the corner of a red block. While the italicization of the word "of" created the musical forte symbol, the effect was pretty subtle, and the type was illegible at small sizes. In 2015, Berklee proudly unveiled a new brand identity, set in slab-serif type with a natural notation as its icon. Even though the new logo was an improvement, predictably, students started a petition. They complained that the new logo was too corporate, less classy, and that losing the word college might degrade their credentials. The petition attracted only 500 signatures, half of their goal and just 1/10 of the school's enrollment. Frankly, if you can pull off a rebrand and just 10% of people are upset, you're doing well. Likewise, the University of Leicester in England upset students when it dropped its 20-year-old logo with an awful orange shield, Latin motto, and outdated typeface for a streamlined shield with more sophisticated typography and understated colors. It was indeed much more contemporary, and the administration was probably right to ignore small pockets of protest. Chances are you haven't heard of Linköping University, one of Sweden's larger public universities with almost 30,000 students. From its founding in 1975, Linköping has used its official seal as its logo, featuring 3 icons that I suspect were designed as LU monograms. To celebrate its 40th anniversary, Linköping undertook a rebranding initiative with design agency Futurniture in Stockholm. And yes, with a name like that, the agency does design some catalogs for IKEA. The new Linköping identity is a startling change, a bold block with extremely modern initials li.u. Too bad that isn't their web domain. Futurniture describes the new logo as modernist, playful, robust, and friendly. The color can vary, but sample materials are clean and somehow inherently Swedish. But of course, this is another university moving towards a modern, less formal identity. So of course, students objected. Students started a Facebook group in opposition, eventually gathering more than 5,000 likes. They compared the new Linköping logo to much more traditional universities in the region. Some thought it looked like an upside-down elephant. Many disliked the way the I's dot had been dropped. Some compared it to decapitation. Most complained about the expense. 2.5 million Swedish krona. About $400,000 Canadian. The Facebook group gathered alternative designs. Ultimately, they got 1,800 votes on 7 finalists, and the winning concepts were virtually identical to the existing seal. But Linköping stuck with the new brand just the same. I think it was the right call. On the other hand, in the "what were they thinking" category, we traveled to Norton, Massachusetts, just outside Boston. Wheaton College is a private, non-sectarian liberal arts college, not to be confused with another Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois. The one in Massachusetts was founded as a women's seminary in 1835, but went co-ed in 1988. Its visual identity consisted of an odd combo of biblical shield and seal with a casual serif wordmark that was starting to show its age. So in March 2017, no one was really surprised when Wheaton announced a new visual identity, designed by Minnelli Inc. in Boston. But they were surprised to see a cold, sans serif wordmark and an industrial icon better suited for a manufacturer, or at least a technical college, than a centuries-old liberal arts institution. College marketers explained that they wanted to create a more forward-looking, inclusive, and personal brand. I'm not seeing it. Predictably, students launched a petition at change.org, and it garnered 1,200 signatures. Not bad for a school with just 1,600 students. Actually, that is bad. Students and faculty complained that the new wordmark was generic, bland, and even grammatically flawed. They called it a bad version of a superhero logo, or like the waste management logo. Wheaton's president, Dennis Hanno, defended the brand research process. At the end of the day, it's a business decision, he said. Designer Mark Minnelli insisted that design, when it's applied well, can move people. Well, yes. Sadly, the new Wheaton identity is still scheduled to roll out this summer. Another pretty weak redesign crashed and burned on takeoff last year at Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio. For 2 decades, Wright State had a highly recognizable logo featuring the Wright brothers and their biplane. It was based on a famous photograph titled First Flight. They retained Florida's York branding for an $850,000 branding project, including $250,000 reportedly just for the logo redesign. Frankly, what they delivered could have been achieved by any competent designer in just a couple of hours. The new logo was a subtle modernization that introduced some sans-serif type, removed the plane's shadow, deepened the colors, and introduced a pair of balanced propeller swooshes around it. Perhaps most controversially, the designers also eliminated the figure of Wilbur to the right, because they said it looked like somebody missed their plane. As usual, the redesign was leaked when a grainy photo from a campus presentation in February proliferated online. It sparked plenty of opposition. Admittedly, the swooshes were a terrible idea. They appeared to show the Wright flyer tumbling in the wind, which is ironically exactly how the historic plane was destroyed hours after the famous photograph was taken. Students strongly objected to dropping Wilbur, and were concerned that the curves looked too much like the Intel logo, or worse, a local waste removal company. Unlike many other institutions launching controversial rebrands, the administration at Wright State backed down almost immediately, even without a petition. In mid-March, they announced that they were scrapping the proposed redesign because of a number of deficiencies, and reverting to the former logo. Which is too bad, really, because the sans-serif type, the darker colors, and the removal of shadows were all improvements. They threw the baby out with the bathwater. Administrators insisted that this is about branding, not the logo, and that what we got is an affirmation that the current logo should stand. So we spent the $250,000 with diligence. Okay. At a time when the university was facing budget cuts, nobody found that convincing. So in the past 2 years, we've seen a dozen higher ed rebrands around the world spark varying degrees of protest from campus stakeholders. I'd say only about half of them actually deserved it. 6 were truly weak logos, inappropriate for the institution, utterly bland, or decidedly worse than what they replaced. 4 of those were dumped or revised by administrators who caved in to pressure, thankfully. But the other half didn't really deserve all the criticism they got. These were slick, professionally executed designs that clearly improved on what went before. Some may have been a bit more radical than conservative students could handle. But in most cases here, the issue was that students, faculty, and alumni had grown emotionally attached to former colors, mascots, or emblems, and they would have resisted anything new. Thankfully, these administrators stuck to their guns. As a general rule, when you rebrand a college or university, you can expect 20 to 30% of your stakeholders to resist the change. Be sure you prepare your leadership for the inevitable challenge. If less than 10% of your students complain, count the rebrand a resounding success. But if 75 or 100% complain, maybe take another look at your design. Thanks again for taking 10 with me. I think I'm going to get out of the brand chemistry lab for the rest of the summer, but we'll be back soon with episodes about new technologies in higher education. Virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence. They're being used in some surprising new ways, in and out of the classroom. To be sure you don't miss them, take a moment now to join more than 13,000 10 with Ken subscribers and followers on any of a dozen platforms. You'll find links to these channels and an email subscription form on our website at 10withken.com. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time. 10 with Ken is a production of Eduvation Inc., copyright 2017. I'm available for conference keynotes, campus PD events, board retreats, and committee workshops, in person or now virtually too. For more information, please visit www.eduvation.guru or 10withken.com. Last week, we looked at 6 university rebrands that missed the mark. The Shield featured. Chances are you haven't heard of Linköping. They compared the new Linköping logo, and certainly feels more contemporary than the Bluebird logo. This is a second time for safety. Futurniture describes the new logo. That's enough.